Catherine Ham, Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 630.
WMAL.
8:37 on WMAL. Good Wednesday morning to you. Pleased to be joined now by Daniel Hannan, who's a conservative member of the European Parliament and is in town because he's the keynote speaker at Competitive Enterprise Institute's annual dinner, which is taking place tonight. Sold out affair, I'm heard. Thank you very much for coming in. Now, we first heard of you when you gave a very passionate speech in 2009. Gordon Brown was speaking, and you pretty much, in America,
in this country, handed him a new one.
Or punked him. All right? I mean, you got pawned him. Now, we were watching that speech, and we were thinking, was that prepared? Or was that off the top of your head? How did that come about?
I'm afraid I've never had the discipline to prepare speeches in advance. But you know what? It's got worse since then. I mean, what I was complaining about then, and what a lot of you were complaining about here, was bailing out our banks, bailing out our big industries. In Europe, unlike here, that's now become an international phenomenon. So we're bailing out each other's countries, massively. Greece and Ireland are having to borrow money to send it to Portugal. Ireland and Portugal are having to borrow money to send it to Greece. Debt is being piled on debt. So in a way, things have gotten much worse than they were even then,
As you look at the situation right now in this country, the president said yesterday he's not worried about the possibility of a double-dip recession. I'm no expert, but as I look at things right now, it seems to me a lot of things are sort of blinking red. Should we be concerned?
I would, despite everything, happily swap my problems for yours. I mean, if you imagine a situation where on top of everything you were also having to bail out Venezuela and Cuba and places, then you'd be roughly kind of where we are. But we are going in the wrong direction. We've responded in the worst possible way to the financial crisis.
We need to let things fail.
Right. I mean, we're spending more, we're taxing more, we're borrowing more than we were, and that is unsustainable.
Well, this comes on the heels of news that Obama is pressing Europe and pledging our help for the Greek crisis because we have so much money laying around now as
Wonderful.
well. It's just important to remember what it is we're talking about when we do these bailouts. I mean, the bailout money is going to go to bankers and bondholders. The repayment is going to come from ordinary taxpayers. So this is not helping Greece. This is sacrificing Greece in order to preserve the whole corporatist system.
What will happen if Greece fails, though? I mean, what happens to Europe and what the rest of the global economy?
I think that's now the least bad option. I think if Greece were allowed to default and decouple and devalue, price itself back into the market, give itself a genuine stimulus of being able to export more cheaply because it was outside the euro and had printed its own currency again, I think that would be the least bad option. It would mean that some of the huge banks that made bad decisions got punished for it, and it would mean that some very wealthy people were not being rescued from the consequences of their own errors.
Well, when then, in your opinion, did we start to get off the right path? Where did it start to go wrong?
I mean, where did it start to go wrong? I would say probably the first Roosevelt, definitely the second. but the real acceleration of the centralization.
But during the Thatcher and Reagan years, we were back on course.
Yeah, we were getting back on course there. The thing is, every generation has to learn these lessons all over again. There are no permanent victories in politics. But the one great advantage you've got is that people here, I think, understand the importance of freedom and free enterprise. I left Europe last week. There are crowds on the street there protesting about the cuts and in favour of more entitlements and so on. There were these great riots in France saying strike till you retire because Sarkozy is planning to raise the retirement age to 36 or something. And then you come here, and of course it's the other way around. You've got people here protesting against entitlements and in favour of tax cuts. Now, that is an incredibly good position to be starting from. It's just a question of making sure that your politicians come into line with public opinion.
Actually getting it to happen is the problem, yeah.
Well, and as conservatives here, we can get a little whiny about, we have this victim sort of idea sometimes, which I think can get too exaggerated, and you have it much worse culturally where you are. What's it like to be a conservative there, and are you seeing any flecks of light in the Cameron sort of era that things might be different culturally in the future?
I would say that on both sides of the Atlantic, from a conservative point of view, people are wiser than their leaders. Right? The role of a conservative, the role of a station like this, the role of a politician like me, is to try and bring public policy in line with public opinion.
Right.
Or another way of putting that is we're there to reassure people that their prejudices are true. We saw these massive extensions of state power. in your country and in mine, they never had popular support. As soon as the opinion polls came in, everyone said, actually, no, we never wanted these bailouts.
You know, in Britain, you're well known for your occasional British sex scandal, and no doubt you have been watching what's been going on in this country of the last few days. Any thoughts on that?
But, you know, I looked up wiener in the Urban Dictionary just before I came here, and it said, currently the funniest word on earth. And it sort of is. I mean, it's funny on so many levels, and it's one of the things that is impossible. You know, it would take a heart of stone not to laugh, as someone once said. But it's always the cover-up that gets you in these things, isn't it? It's what I think of as the Watergate principle. It's never the offence, it's always the cover-up.
We're talking with Daniel Hannan, who also wrote a book, which is a warning for Americans, The New Road to Serfdom, a letter of warning to America and why America must not follow Europe. All right, we had a big debate about national health care in this country, and there are a lot of people who want to repeal what we call Obamacare in this country now, and we've seen companies now saying, listen, if this goes through, we're not going to be able to offer our employees health care. Give us your take on what national health care has meant in England and what we should be worried about here in this country.
Well, the one thing I would say is, if you are planning to reverse it, do it right away. Because once something like this beds down, it becomes politically irreversible. That's really the top experience that I would share with you from Britain. I mean, we now have a system. It's not the worst system in the world by any means. It's just not particularly good. If you look at measurable comparatives, like length of time to see a doctor, survival rates, you know, how likely are you to be alive if you get stroke, cancer, heart disease. We're not the worst in the world, but we are pretty bad compared to a lot of industrialized countries. And yet it becomes impossible to criticize the system, because any attempt to reform it is howled down as an attack on the people who work in it. And we're seeing that at the moment. The government has some really very modest plans to try and decentralize power. Every proposal they put forward, they're screamed at. They want to privatize it. They're attacking the angels who work in the system, all those hard-working doctors. Now, you've got 1.3 million people now, 1.3 million people working one way or another for the British healthcare system. It's the third biggest employer in the world after Indian Railways and the People's Army in China. That is a block that is very, very difficult to reform. So don't go down this road and then think that you can turn back if it doesn't work out.
And if we needed any evidence of that, just look at what's happening right now when they talk about needing to change the entitlement program around Medicare. People scream bloody murder, because once they get used to an idea, it's sort of hard to get people to wrap their heads around the idea of changing it.
That's right. It's the tyranny of the status quo. People are much more easily frightened off a change than encouraged. I mean, healthcare being a very good example. The chief beneficiaries of a more mixed system where there was some provision for private healthcare, the chief beneficiaries of that would be the people working for it, the nurses, the hospital porters and so on. But they are always the first to protest against any reform, because they've been frightened into thinking that any change will lead to them losing their jobs. And to be honest, it's not helped by people like Michael Moore coming over and making films telling us that, you know, everyone in America is kind of left, you know, without treatment if they're not rich and all the rest of it.
You said that we have it better than you do. Angela Merkel's here in the United States. It seems that Germany has it kind of right in Europe. Do you agree with that, or are they in a better boat than other countries?
You know why? They've got a really good thing going, because what suits Germany most is for the euro to be battered and cheapened but intact. What's happening is that Germany is enjoying this massive artificial export boom, because the value of its currency is being dragged down by what's happening in Greece, in Portugal, in Spain, in Ireland, and so on. So Germany, it has got, you know, it's ticking every box as being the most prosperous country in Europe. And to be fair, they've done a lot of the right things. I mean, they've tried to deregulate, they've tried to cut taxes. Even so, the size of the state in Germany is still way higher than it is here. And although you are starting in a better place than them, you're heading in the wrong direction, whereas they're at least trying to turn the corner. It
was great to have you here today. Thanks very much for coming in. Yeah. Enjoy your time in D.C. How often do you get around here?
Maybe a couple of times a year. I'll be off now. Every time I come here, I always do the whole sort of Mr. Smith thing, and I go to look at the Jefferson Memorial. And I've got to say, he's looking pretty unhappy at what's being done to the Republic he founded.
That's right.
I just wish I had a British accent, because we'd all sound a lot smarter.
Right.
It's just lovely to listen to your accent.
Daniel, thank you again for coming in. Daniel Hannan, our guest here on WMA. Oh, by the way, keynote speaker at the Competitive Enterprise Institute's annual dinner, and also author of the book, The New Road to Serfdom, A Letter of Warning to America and Why America Must Not